Last week we talked about Steep and the tranquility of it compared to most other games out there. Now I'm going to talk about it again, and you're going to sit there and you're going to like it and you're going to follow, subscribe, or thumbs up or whatever. It doesn't even matter to me. But I'll be fair. I'm going to meet you halfway. I won't talk specifically about the game again, but I want to mention something that is related but completely underappreciated and basically goes unnoticed in most games. I first noticed it in Hitman when it first came out. It's basically when you perform certain actions, I was getting myself sucked into a universe that I didn't think was quite possible. So, what am I exactly talking about? Dynamic music. To help you understand dynamic music, it's also known as adaptive music. It's basically the difference between music just playing when a level starts, such as these two examples. So looking at an example like this, basically we start off with no music, and then as soon as we hit the kind of level start, I guess you could say, or in this case the challenge, the music starts to play. Now, it's not particularly any type of music, and it's going to change as you're going to see in the next example anyways, but basically what happens is an event was triggered. In this case, I started a challenge and music started to play. Now, in this next portion here, the music was already playing, but will change as soon as I trigger the challenge again, which basically allows for maybe an atmosphere or kind of attitude change while playing a level, but doesn't really get you involved with it. Music can set the tone and can make or break certain games sometimes. In this case, Steep is pretty forgiving and is pretty free range, so it doesn't really matter particularly if there is music playing or if there isn't, if it's, hard rock or some sort of pop that sounds like it's from MTV. What really matters is that it just kind of fits the overall tone of the game, and Steep has a very good soundtrack for that. However, when the pop music plays or the copyrighted music plays, usually it just kind of plays on its own and doesn't really add too much other than entertainment value, if anything. Okay, I promise I'm gonna show you some other games here, but just bear with me on Steep here. So I'm gonna have to shut up in a second, but basically if you listen to music right now, as I slow down, the music pace changes. My character will then move forward and start accelerating again, and you hear the music pace change again. Here we slow down again. And again, the music will change pace. Every time an action is taken by myself, the player, or in this case, like kind of the controller of this character, it really engrosses you in knowing that your actions have feedback, which is actually a critical portion of design. Now, I'll be releasing a whole thing on product design and game design, and just basically I'll give you the cliff notes or the synopsis of what I'm talking about. Now, when you're designing a product, you really always want to have feedback. Like, for example, when you flick a switch, you can feel that kind of click usually. If it's one of the flat surfaced ones, you can feel that click. If it's one of the kind of sticks that hang out a little bit, you can hear that kind of flick of that light switch, and that gives you feedback. And you might be wondering what that has anything to do with this. It's because every single action you take in a game is almost double verified by that music and the character's movement. Instead of it just being the character moving and you just seeing your actions have effect, music absolutely engrosses you into that world. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean, because Steep is just one example. Again, I mentioned Hitman was the big one. Watch what happens when we watch Hitman. So just in order to kind of give your ears a bit of a palate cleanse of sorts, let's just listen to the theme of Hitman for a quick second. Just get a feel for it, kind of review it and understand it so you can kind of get in that mode, because it's a lot different of a feel than Steep was. So, while starting your first mission in Paris, you decide to skip the training missions because, you know, why bother? Although I will just say the training missions are kind of fun. It basically just starts out like any game would. There is a cinematic orchestra, well done, nothing wrong with that. It really sets the tone, the mood, everything like that. It's a high-value production. But it's static music. It's not being affected by anything that I'm doing. It just kind of is. And that's fine. That's the basic of video game music. But let's watch this particular action in which I, for Agent 47, decide to kind of sneak around a guard. Did you hear it? You have to have heard that. Let's just kind of go through that one again real quick. So, Agent 47 climbs the fence, he makes the landing, and then you have that kind of espionage-y spy music that plays. That is a direct action from your action. That is the feedback that I'm talking about. Let me show you another more exciting example. Okay, so here we're gonna kind of watch my almost failed attempt to strangle a technician here. So as you can hear, the music kind of builds up and you get this tension, and then basically as soon as you complete your action, the music changes, the tone shifts, everything about it becomes a bit more suspenseful. You really start feeling like you're in this, and then once the disguise change happens, it calms down. Just in case you didn't quite catch that, let's just watch this example. Team music, upbeat, a little bit more suspenseful, again, changes with your actions. Your actions cause that music to shift. If you were to even do something a little bit more hostile, like, I don't know, let's say throw an axe at somebody's head, then you're going to get a completely different sound, and especially if you're going to be caught, it's definitely going to feel a little bit more on the actiony side. At the exact same time, while this is going on, and let's say you try to sneak away, the music that plays is still fairly dynamic, and once you get further away from that danger, it starts kind of becoming a little bit more suspenseful rather than more kind of action oriented, which completely immerses you into that level. If you were to look at static music, sometimes it works as well to get you involved in an environment. For example, for the Sanguine party that we go to, we have the main runway, which has its own music. And then you have the kind of bar area for, you know, socializing and everything. It's got lower tempo music and everything like that. It gets you in that environment. Now, my personal favorite, though, is the dynamic music when these actions play. So let's just listen to this one out. So as I fumble around with my keyboard because my controller was dead and I couldn't remember the keys to it, so I look like a bit of a goober here, but basically during this entire sequence you're going to notice the music changes. It's actually a mix of the static music that's playing in the game already, just kind of setting the atmosphere there, and then also this dynamic music of the actions kind of that I'm taking or the areas that I'm going into. This also happens too, I know when 47 climbs a pipe, it gets kind of into this kind of espionage sounding music, but overall the music always keeps changing, even when the targets get close to you. Almost like kind of boss music, but at the same time it's not really meant to warn you of a boss kind of incoming. It's more to just get you in that moment of suspense and make it feel like you're in an actual like movie, like you're the movie star, and the actions that you take, again, have feedback. It really immerses you into a whole new level of gameplay rather than just kind of having the same music play no matter what happens, whether there's, you know, a gunfight going on or you're stealthing around. And that's what I actually love about it. And Payday 2 also, I should say, has that type of music. They have the stealth, they have the anticipation, and then they have the actual like police raid that happens, the high adrenaline music that goes on, which also makes it a great game to get immersed in because it kind of sets the tempo, it sets the mood, it gets you involved. And here we're actually going to watch how the music kind of changes as soon as the target gets close to you, which actually adds a lot more tension to that moment. Honestly, I could probably talk about Hitman and show you tons of more clips in regard to the gameplay relating to the music and just how engrossing it really is, but I feel like I need to move on to something else and show you as well, Battlefield 1. Now you might be thinking, it doesn't really have any music that plays in it, and to a certain extent you would be correct. Now Battlefield 1 doesn't use static music per se, but they kind of don't use adaptive music either. It's less based on your actions and more based on what's happening in the actual game itself. So for example, regardless of what you do, you're not probably going to be able to change the music. How the music changes is when your team is winning or losing or bringing in a behemoth. It really kind of encapsulates that epic moment of either victory or loss, whatever the case might be. And with that, Battlefield 1 actually kind of really gives you a more cinematic feel. Maybe not perhaps that you're controlling the music or the movie itself, but it makes you feel like you're in something kind of epic, in something big, in something massive. And for that to be in a game like Battlefield 1 really shows kind of the effort that somebody went to add that sort of feature, because otherwise usually games like these are very run and gun, silent, maybe a little bit of music once the victory is happening, but this actually adds that tension, because I know when the ticket count runs down, or in this case we're playing operations, the music completely changes into this more urgent epic battle that you could either win or lose, doesn't really matter whether you're doing a defense or an offense. And with that, it really does kind of get your mind going, thinking like, okay, this is it, this is our last stand, we have to win this and we really have to push through. And it really does give some great moments and tension, and especially with all the action that's going on in Battlefield 1, with planes flying over, dropping bombs on your head, tanks running all over the place, horses trying to slice you up, infantrymen shooting rifles, submachine guns, and other steampunky weapons at you. It just adds so much value, and I think it's the most underappreciated aspect in a lot of games. Some people might just turn it off because they just don't care, but for me, I love it. It's an indicator, and it's not cheesy like just having a boss music level or just having it happen when somebody gets close to you, because I don't want that. I want it to be kind of affected by actions either completely out of my control or by actions in my control. And what I mean by completely out of my control, I basically mean this is a whole team game, so I can't control exactly how the battlefield is going to either sway in my favor or out of it. I'm only one soldier in a battalion of all these others, so it really does help that this music kind of helps you feel like, okay, we all have to push, we're all in this together, and it gives you that kind of communal feeling of victory or loss. Either way, I think Battlefield 1, Hitman, and Steep integrated music so beautifully and so seamlessly that it absolutely increases all gaming experiences, and I really do hope to see this happen more in games. I know it's difficult probably to integrate, and it's definitely something that requires an excellent maybe orchestra or artist to basically render, but once it's done, it is beautiful, it is masterful, and it's just like maintenance. Once it's not there, it's appreciated, but once it's there and it's being done, no one really probably notices or appreciates it. But I'm hoping with this video it gives you a bit of an intake, and you can actually start to learn to appreciate the music in games. Comment and let us know which game you thought had the best adaptive music. Other than that, I just want to thank you so much for earing me out. Get it? Earing me out? Because we're talking about like music and audio and adaptive music, and